And it's Eric, right?
Yes.
Cool. So your grandma, where'd she grow up in Malala?
She grew up in Malala, and she big
Mm-hmm.
saw Bigfoot. It would have been sometime in the 50s, picking huckleberries over on the Warm Springs Indian Reservation.
No way.
And so she went over,
Kanita?
kind of close to that area, but it would have been probably a little closer to like Timothy Lake, Olali Lake country in that area, but on the reservation. And she went over there to go huckleberry picking with my great grandfather, and she saw a Bigfoot over top of the huckleberries, and she described this thing as 10 feet tall and covered in hair, and she was really terrified by it, and she's told the same story, with pretty good accuracy for years, and so um,
And this is
her
your grandma that's still alive?
my grandma is still alive.
And she's how old now? 99?
92.
92. Wow. What's her name?
Irene.
Irene. And she's out in Malala?
Yep.
That's pretty crazy. How old was she when she saw Bigfoot?
She would have been probably in her late 30s to early 40s.
Really?
Yep.
You think she'd ever be willing to let you record her talking about it, and you could bring that sometime? Or
Oh yeah.
that'd be awesome if you could do that. Bring a little clip of her side of it, what she saw.
Yeah. No, absolutely. I can totally do that. I've heard this story many different times throughout my youth, and
Okay.
her father, my great grandfather, allegedly saw Bigfoot on more than one occasion.
Really?
He was a logger for years, and he talked about a Bigfoot coming into a logging camp he was living in,
Okay.
and basically throwing a fit and tipping over barrels of diesel and tearing up their camp.
That's what a lot of people say. So it's how could so many people have these stories and they all kind of match up and
Well, and I'm a cautious skeptic. I won't say that I think it's real, but I also can't
Right.
say that it's not. I've been roaming the woods hard for, I don't know, the last 25 years, and I haven't seen one yet myself, but just because I haven't seen one doesn't mean it's not there.
Have you seen any big nest looking type things, almost kind of like this, it's like a nest in the ground where it looks like something's been laying, something really big?
I've seen those, but usually I've always chalked those up to being elk beds, elk or bear beds. But there's an area up the Clackamas River, this area around Thunder Mountain and Skookum Lake,
Mm-hmm.
and there's Bigfoot enthusiasts that I have run into up there
Really?
countless times, and according to them, that area is a hotbed of Bigfoot activity. So
Really?
I've never seen anything in there myself, but I have over the last decade I have probably ran into these people, I don't know, a dozen different times, and they are all about it.
What area is that again?
It's up the Clackamas River, kind of between the Clackamas and Malala drainages, Skookum Lake area.
Is that anywhere near Squaw Mountain?
Not really. It would be southeast of Squaw Mountain by probably, as a crow flies, probably 10 or 15 miles.
And then what would make them want to look up there? Are they getting reports that that's a hot area, or?
Apparently, other people have talked about either hearing things. I've never heard of anyone actually saying they've seen something there, but I know that they go and set up audio and video cameras trying to catch Bigfoot activity.
All right. Yeah, a lot of the stuff I've been hearing on these podcasts is saying that you can't necessarily go out and just find him. He'll kind of find you. If you're just kind of doing your own thing, he'll kind of come out when he wants to.
These people are very serious about it.
Okay.
And so it's funny, I've ran into them so many times. I'm very comfortable around them, and but one of the guys, they always warn me. They're always concerned about my safety.
Really?
And so every time I run into them, they're always telling me Well, it's a good thing you have dogs with you because, dogs will be able to sense a Bigfoot and protect you, or,
Yeah.
a Bigfoot won't come in if you have dogs with you. Um, but one of the guys in particular, I was telling him when he was concerned about my safety, like, well, I carry, a 357 with me, like, I'm not really not too worried.
Yeah.
And then he showed me his pistol, which was Ruger Super Alaskan 45. No, 454 Casole. So
Okay.
basically, it's the one of the biggest production handguns ever made, and that's what he carries for Bigfoot protection. So they got a lot of interesting stories.
Now, are you running into the same group of people, or are these different groups
It's
every
no, it's
time?
it's the same group I've ran into multiple times. So I just ran into the
Okay.
one guy with the big gun. I think I ran into him last fall, and he'd
Okay.
been camped up out there for, I don't know, a few days, and was going up there pretty much every weekend towards fall, just hiking around and looking for signs. So
Has he said if he's found anything?
he hasn't. He's never told me of anything definite. So I don't know. I don't know if there's stuff that he's not telling me, or if he just really hasn't found anything. But for whatever reason, he keeps going back. They keep going back to the same spot.
Did you tell him about your grandma's story?
Yeah, I told him about my grandma's story. I've heard other stories from other people. That one sticks with me the most because I've heard it so many times. But
What do you think of your grandma's story?
oh, he absolutely thought that was true, and it sounded like other stories he'd heard before.
Okay. Where now is this person, this group? Are they from Oregon? Are they
Yeah, as far
like
as I know, they're all from
locals?
Oregon. I think they're fairly local. I'm not sure exactly where they're out of, but like I said, I run into them up there probably on average at least once a year, and I'll just be hiking up in the area, and it's like, oh, it's the Bigfoot people, and then I'll usually end up sitting down. They're usually camped out at the lake, and I'll end up sitting down and visiting with them for an hour or so and kind of hear about their travels.
Yeah. Yeah, I think something like that would be pretty cool, but I don't know. You hear about those guys that just went and supposedly like they froze to death up in Washington looking for Bigfoot, and
Yep.
I think personally I'd want to go when it's not obviously super cold and go with like a expert team, because if these things really are that scary and can do some things, I'd want to be smart about it.
Yeah. No, anytime you go to the woods, you should be careful. The worst thing
Hmm.
I've ever ran into at Skookum Lake was I had a pair of cougars come in on me and my 3 dogs.
Okay.
That was, I don't know, 5, 6 years ago, and I was definitely glad I had a gun. That was the scariest thing I've seen up there yet, though. But Skookum Lake has always been kind of the
Skookum Lake.
Skookum is an Indian word, and I think it has to do with like powerful spirits or something along that lines.
And that's what the
Um,
lake's actually called if you look it
yep,
up on like Google Earth and all that.
yep.
Okay.
Yeah, you can look it up on the internet and you'll see pictures of it. And one thing that's kind of interesting about that area is they decommissioned most of the roads in that area after the flood of '96, and
Okay.
so it doesn't get a lot of travelers anymore. Um, there's not a ton of ways to get in there, and there's there's miles of what is now effectively roadless area because the roads have all been ripped up and you can't drive them. And
Okay.
so, I guess if something was gonna be taking shelter out there, that'd be a pretty isolated spot to be in this area.
And now, what area was your grandma with the huckleberries? Was that Malala?
No, she was over in the Warm Springs area.
Okay.
So I think she would have been somewhere, like I said, kind of close to Olali Lake Country or Timothy Lake Country. Um,
Okay.
but yeah, which would be east of that by, as the crow flies once again, probably 10 or 15 miles.
Okay. Okay. Interesting. Has she heard any other stories, your grandma or anybody else that that like hunting buddies or anything?
Yeah, a neighbor of mine uh, says he's a Bigfoot believer. He says that he ran into a Bigfoot, didn't see it but could hear it over elk hunting some years ago. It would have been over towards Granite, so kind of the Elkhorn Mountains area, which would be northeastern-ish Oregon. And
really, he just ran into it.
He was asleep, and he said it woke him up. So
really,
he could hear this thing screaming at him, and a seasoned hunter, and he's like, it wasn't an elk bugling, it wasn't a cougar scream, it wasn't the grunt of a bear. He's like, I can only assume it had to have been a Bigfoot. And so he said he could hear it across this meadow from his camp, and he finally got so irritated he went out and followed after it. And he ended up following, I think he said, for, I don't know, a quarter mile or something. And as he got close, it took off, and he could hear it crashing through the brush. And when he went into the timber, it was all down logs. And he said, I just can't imagine what animal would be big enough to jump over all of these down logs that were, basically waist high on an average man.
Like, so it broke the logs.
It was leaping over them. He could hear it crashing over him, and so just a person walking through there would struggle to get over all this down timber.
Where was that location again?
It was over in Granite area.
Where's
that? Like the Elkhorns, northeastern Oregon.
Okay.
So somewhere that he had elk hunted for years.
So is that like kind of above Bend area?
No, this would be more out like. Not quite, but Baker City, North Powder, kind of that end of Oregon.
Okay.
And he went back on another occasion to go hunting, and was going to be solo, and he got a really bad feeling. He'd hunted there for years, and he packed up his camp and drove home. He never even stayed one night. Yeah, he was by himself on that occasion. When he heard it the original time, his son was with him, but was asleep and didn't wake up in the tent. And but yeah, he went back a couple years later solo, and was like, it was too much.
Now, who's that again? Just one of your buddy? Your
neighbor of mine lives here in Estacada.
Okay. Does he come in here to get haircuts too?
No, he hasn't gotten his haircut for a while. He's
okay.
He's unfortunately going through cancer treatment right now.
Oh, that's too bad.
And I think his long hair is kind of a FU to cancer.
Yeah, for sure. Well, if he ever wants to stop by and chat, let me know. But
he'd be another one. He'd be one that I could. I'm sure would like to retell the story on a recording. He was very concerned and upset about the Bigfoot hunters that went missing in Washington. Yeah, I don't know. I've been surprised by animals camping quite a few times. I was backpacking in the Seven Devils of Idaho a few years ago, and woke up to this weird grunting, kind of heavy breathing noise. And I thought my girlfriend that was in the tent with me was maybe having some issues with the elevation. We were camped at probably 7,000 feet or better. And some people just don't handle altitude well. And so some pretty serious health problems can come from altitude. And so I heard this heavy breathing. I tried to wake her up, and she had her earplugs in because apparently I snore. And I finally got her awake, and I'm like, what the hell's the matter with you? And she's like, what? I'm not doing anything. Well, I realized it was outside the tent. And so I get out of the tent. Turns out it's a couple of mountain goats. You can definitely run into things that you can't explain. Mm-hmm. And I've had times before in the woods that something spooked me, and I really couldn't put a finger on what it was. I spend a lot of time out there, and if my spider senses are going off too strong, I'm not afraid to be in the woods. So if something's telling me I should get out, I generally heed that warning. But
so if your grandma saw Bigfoot, she swears up and down it, the most honest person on the earth kind of thing, what would make you still question that he's still out there? Because I still question myself, so I'm just curious.
I haven't seen one myself.
Okay.
The story is from a long time ago, and she'd already heard stories about sightings from my great-grandfather, who died when I was pretty young.
Okay.
But, he was known to throw some wine and some whiskey back, and so I've always kind of thought like, well, did he see this, or is this something out of a big bender drunk at a logging camp?
Right,
And so she'd kind of already had, I guess, the seed planted a little bit in her mind.
Yeah.
So
kind of makes you have a little
makes me
wonder.
a little bit skeptical, but like I said, I haven't seen one in all of my years of roaming around some pretty deep country. But just because I haven't seen it doesn't mean it doesn't exist. Well, even the Native Americans talk about something very, very similar to, or what most people would consider to be a Bigfoot.
Absolutely.
But you can also, be always playing the devil's advocate and always being skeptical.
Yeah.
Exhaustion and food deprivation or sleep deprivation or whatever, you can see some pretty weird shit.
Right.
So, years ago, I saw a ghost on a roof working at night.
Really?
And I'm really certain that it was just fatigue and lighting and stress, but I swear I saw a child ghost up on a roof in the middle of the night. And
what did it look like?
It looked like a girl in an old-fashioned dress that was maybe 6-7 years old.
Really?
And it scared the shit out of me. I've always said it probably took 10 years off my life.
Where was this at?
This was down in Portland off of Macadam Avenue. I was working on the Zupan's grocery down there in the middle of the night, doing a repipe, and I've been working nights for weeks.
It was on that Zupan's, you saw it?
And it was on the roof of their building.
Interesting.
And like I said, I had middle of the night. It was a glary night. I had a wobble light or a construction light up there, and I was bent down, and the light was in front of me, and my coworker was in front of me. And I looked up, and obviously I thought I saw a ghost, and so apparently my eyes must have been huge, and it scared my coworker. So then I thought he saw it too, and so I just yelled.
What did he see?
And he saw my reaction, and that's what scared him. But because he saw my reaction and it scared him, it scared me, thinking that it was actually real.
Like when you adjusted your eyes and looked, and
it was gone. But I mean, clear as day to me in my mind at that time.
You saw
I
something.
Looked up, and there was a little girl standing behind him and behind the light.
Interesting. What color was the dress?
The dress, she was almost in black and white. Like, if you've ever seen a picture where they've taken a black and white picture and then made it color.
Yeah.
You know how it like the colors aren't quite right?
Yeah. It's like a washed out.
That's how she looked. She looked like a black and white picture that had been made color afterwards, and the colors didn't seem like they quite fit the picture right.
Okay. Interesting.
Fortunately, I have a lot of stories, and they're all true. Some of them I wish they weren't. Driving home late, it's in the winter, and it's dark early, so I don't know, it's maybe 6 o'clock at night. My boss tells me, you have to go stop at that job and set that sink. Well, I get there, it's dark, it's a big creepy house, and I was pissed off because it was a Friday night. I get there, I go down the basement, and I start setting this bar sink in the basement. There's still nobody living in the house, and I'm sitting there working like in the cabinet, and all of a sudden I hear what sounds like an old record player playing from the attic, and I swear to God I could hear people dancing up there. And it scared me so bad, I left all my tools and left. Called my boss and said, this can get done on Monday. I don't care what you want. I'm out. This is too much for me.
Wow.
But
where was that location?
It was down in the Laurelhurst area.
Portland?
In Portland, roughly kind of like 39th, 33rd and Burnside area.
Okay. How long ago was that?
This would have been 20 years ago. 20 to 25 years ago. I was a young apprentice, but I will never forget being under there, and all of a sudden I can hear music playing, and it sounds like scratchy, like an old record player. and then you can
Whoa.
hear people dancing. And like I said, big empty house, all of it was wood floors in there, and it
They
was
say
coming
like,
from you could tell it was coming from the attic. And I'm like, there is no way in hell I'm going to go check this out. Like, I'm getting the hell out of here.
well, that's a really awesome story. Thank you for sharing it.
Yeah.
And then we'll see it for next time too. I can't wait to hear more stories from you.
I got more than a few, but
Alrighty. Well, thank you so much, Eric.